Ta-da. You know what's wild, man? Sometimes the most logical, grounded people, the ones who've lived their whole lives in systems of law, evidence, structure, they're the ones who end up having the deepest spiritual realizations. Like, there's something about being surrounded by facts and rules that eventually makes you question what's beyond them. Rob Bonta was that kind of guy. Brilliant legal brain, activist, a dude who believed in justice down to his bones. But what caught everyone off guard was that near the end of his life, he said something about Islam that wasn't political, wasn't social commentary, it wasn't even moral preaching. It was human. It was spiritual. Duh. And that's the thing. When someone like him speaks from that place, it hits differently because you don't expect it. You expect statements about policy, about equity, about rights, not about the human soul. But he goes almost out of nowhere. Islam has something the modern world has forgotten. Surrender. That one word, surrender. And I swear that word carries so much weight. Because surrender isn't weakness. It's the most counterintuitive form of strength. To let go of control, to stop fighting every single current, to just trust that there's something higher guiding it, that's powerful. Today, you can see it when people meditate, when they breathe out and drop all the mental noise. You can see it in fighters who stop overthinking and start flowing. That's surrender. And he recognized that Islam, at its essence, is literally about that. Not domination, not control, not ego. It's about submission to peace, to something greater than yourself. He wasn't talking religion like dogma. He was talking about it like truth. Sada, the world didn't know what to do with that statement because it didn't fit the narrative. The media machine runs on polarization, religion versus science, East versus West, belief versus logic. But this guy, this attorney general, crosses that line and basically says, maybe the people we've been trying to understand are holding on to something the rest of us lost. That's what made it hit. It's like hearing a quantum physicist suddenly say, you know what? Maybe consciousness isn't just a side effect of the brain. It rattles people because it's coming from someone who's not supposed to say that. Ta-da! And I think what he saw, what he felt, was that Islam isn't just a set of rituals or rules. It's a system of balance. There's discipline and surrender, order and freedom, community and individuality. It's like martial arts in that sense, discipline that leads to liberation. You follow a form so tightly that eventually you transcend the form. You stop performing moves and start becoming movement itself. That's what faith does when it's real. And that's what he was talking about, I think. He wasn't pushing ideology. He was reflecting something ancient, primal, and necessary. Sada, maybe that's what he realized, that the world's biggest problem right now isn't lack of knowledge, it's lack of soul. We've got facts, data, science, AI, but people are hollow inside. Everyone's looking for something to fill that space. Fame, likes money, identity, politics, and none of it works. And here's this guy, a lawyer, a politician, a man of systems, saying the answer might be in surrender. That's insane. Not insane like crazy, insane like profound. Sada, he didn't mean surrender to a regime or an institution. He meant surrender to the reality that you're not the center of the universe. That's a radical idea in a time where everyone's told they're their own God. Think about that. Every app, every commercial, every influencer, they all tell you you're the main character. But that's exhausting, man. Carrying the weight of being your own God. It's impossible. You need to bow to something. You need to admit that you're not infinite. That's where peace starts. That's what he saw. And maybe, just maybe, he realized that's why Islam survived every storm for centuries. Empires fell, systems collapsed, languages vanished. But this one idea, submission, outlived them all. Because it speaks to something older than politics. It speaks to human nature. You know, I think what freaked people out wasn't just what he said, but how he said it. It wasn't rehearsed. It didn't sound like some calculated PR statement. It was raw. Like a man who's been carrying this realization for a while and suddenly just decides to let it spill out. There was this strange calm in his voice, not the kind that comes from confidence, but the kind that comes from understanding. Like he'd seen something most of us are too busy scrolling to notice, and that's what makes it powerful. Because when someone who's lived in the world of power, law, logic, when that kind of person starts talking about something as ancient and sacred as Islam in a spiritual way, it doesn't sound like religion anymore. It sounds like truth. Shaja, he talked about how people today have replaced spirituality with performance. Like, everyone's trying to appear good, appear deep, appear aware, but very few are actually present. You meditate because it's trendy. You pray because it looks disciplined. You post your moral outrage because it makes you look virtuous. It's all optics, all noise. But Islam, real Islam, strips all that away. It doesn't care how you look. It's between you and the Creator. There's something brutally honest about that. You can't fake submission. You either surrender or you don't. Shada, and that's what I think he was pointing at, the honesty of it. Because we live in an era of pretending. Everyone's curating their soul for public display. And he's sitting there going, maybe truth isn't in the display. Maybe it's in the surrender. That hit me hard, man. Because it's true. We've lost that quiet humility, that stillness where you admit you don't have all the answers. He mentioned that word peace, not as an external state, but as something that comes when you finally stop wrestling with yourself. And that's what Islam literally means, peace through submission. Like, how ironic is that? The world hears the word Islam and immediately thinks conflict, but the word itself means peace. And that's exactly what he was talking about, how language has been twisted, how meaning got buried under politics. Today he said something like, you can't legislate peace, you can only live it. That's such a powerful thing to come from a man of law. It's like he realized you can't fix the world just by writing better rules. You fix it by aligning your heart. Laws control behavior, but faith, real faith, transforms being. That's the difference. Touch out. And when you think about it, that's kind of terrifying for people who build their identity around control. Because submission isn't about control. It's about trust. It's about giving up the illusion that you're the master of the universe. And that's not easy for the modern mind. We're taught to dominate. Nature markets each other. But what if the next evolution isn't domination, it's surrender? That's what made his statement feel like a prediction, not a confession. It's like he was saying, you think technology is the next revolution, but it's not. The next revolution is spiritual. It's people remembering what it means to bow, to breathe, to believe. And coming from him, that sounded almost prophetic. He didn't talk about religion as a label. He talked about it as an awakening. Like he'd seen that all this chaos in the world, the wars, the loneliness, the anxiety, it all comes from one place, disconnection from purpose. People are spiritually homeless. They're building towers to touch the sky, but can't even look up long enough to see the stars. And he's saying maybe Islam's core, the act of surrender, might be the map back home. And that's the thing, you don't have to be Muslim to feel the truth in that. You just have to be honest enough to admit that maybe the modern idea of freedom isn't freedom at all. Maybe we're prisoners of choice, prisoners of ego, prisoners of self. Submission. Real conscious surrender might be the key to liberation. And Rob Bonta, a man who lived his whole life inside the logic of law, understood that before he left this world. That's why it hit so hard. That's why it hit so hard. It's weird, man. You think about how a guy like that spends his life fighting for justice, trying to build systems that make sense, laws, policies, social balance. And then right before he's gone, he's talking about spiritual balance. That's such a shift. Like he realized there's a limit to what laws can fix. You can write all the policies in the world, but you can't legislate peace into someone's heart. You can't regulate love or empathy or truth. That stuff comes from somewhere deeper. And maybe that's what he saw, that there's this layer under all of it that modern life completely ignores. He said something that stuck with me, man. Something about how humans today don't know how to be still. That's such a simple idea, but it's profound. We can't sit in silence anymore. The second there's quiet, we grab our phones, scroll, distract ourselves. Silence feels like death to the modern mind. But in that silence is where all the answers live. That's where surrender happens. And that's the kind of peace he was talking about. Not the peace you get from comfort or winning or success, but the peace that comes from just being still. From saying, I don't control this world, but I trust it. He said Islam teaches that the act of bowing, of placing your head to the ground, is not humiliation, it's liberation. You're not lowering yourself, you're freeing yourself from the illusion that you're higher than everything else. And man, that's beautiful. That's something modern culture doesn't get, because we've built this system where everyone's chasing above. Above average, above others, above nature. but there's no peace up there. You just get lonelier the higher you climb. And what really blew people's minds was that he wasn't talking like a convert or a preacher. He wasn't trying to join something or promote anything. He was describing something true, like he tasted it, not studied it. He said the more he learned about Islam, the more he saw that it's not about believing in something, it's about remembering something. Like the human soul already knows the truth and faith is just waking it back up. Tata, that right there is heavy, because think about what that means. It means maybe truth isn't something you find outside yourself. Maybe it's something you uncover inside once you stop fighting, and surrender is the key to that. That's what he was getting at. He said people keep trying to discover God, but maybe the real discovery is realizing he was never missing. We were. And that's what hit me, man. Because if you look at our world, anxiety, depression, chaos, all of it comes from trying to be our own gods. Everyone's playing creator, but no one's humble enough to be creation. That's why we're tired all the time. We're carrying a weight we weren't built to carry. And here's this man who spent his life dealing with the toughest parts of humanity. Crime, justice, corruption, saying the cure isn't in control, it's in surrender. Turns out people don't like hearing that, though. It sounds too simple, too vulnerable. The idea that maybe peace isn't something you build, but something you allow. But that's the truth. The same way a fighter stops losing when he stops forcing every punch, he relaxes, trusts the flow, and that's when power comes. Life works the same way. That's the kind of understanding he had in those last days. That peace isn't found through dominance, it's found through alignment. And honestly, it makes sense that it shocked people, because nobody expects a guy from that background to say something like that. It's almost like he broke the matrix for a second, stepped outside the political noise and said, you all are missing the point. And in that moment, it wasn't about Islam as a label or faith as a debate. It was about truth, the kind that doesn't care what side you're on, what country you're from, or what title you hold. Ta-da, it makes you wonder, man, maybe that's what death does. Maybe when you get close to that edge, all the noise fades. The ego, the competition, the debates, all of it. And what's left is clarity. Maybe he saw something we don't see yet. Maybe he understood that the last frontier isn't Mars or the metaverse. It's the soul. Cha-cha-cha, you ever think about how people only start talking about truth when they're close to the end? Like, all the noise disappears when the clock's running out. That's when people stop performing. That's when they stop lying to themselves. Rob Bonta's words felt like that. Like someone who'd stopped caring about optics and just wanted to speak what's real. There was no filter, no agenda. Just a man who'd seen the inside of the world and realized how empty it was without something sacred anchoring it. He said something like, we've built systems to control everything, but we've forgotten how to trust. That line stayed with me, because it's so true. We control our food, our time, our image, our stories. We even try to control death, pretending it's some kind of medical error instead of a natural transition. But all that control is built on fear. Fear of losing, fear of uncertainty, fear of surrender. And maybe that's what he saw in Islam, a faith that doesn't fear surrender. It celebrates it. Ta-da! It's not about submission out of weakness. It's about recognizing that true power comes from the one who doesn't need to prove it. When you get that, everything shifts. Your ego softens. You start seeing life differently. You stop needing to win every argument, to dominate every conversation. You start realizing that peace isn't passive. It's power under control. And that's something our culture has forgotten. Today talked about the discipline too, how Islam ties faith to daily rhythm. The prayers, the fasting, the charity. It's like a workout for the soul. Structure that keeps your spirit from drifting. And I think that fascinated him because, let's be real, we've all become unstructured creatures. We wake up when we want, eat when we want, scroll endlessly, binge everything, and then wonder why we feel lost. Discipline is a form of mercy. It gives your chaos a shape. That's what he saw in Islam, not restriction, but direction. And what's wild is that he wasn't glorifying it like some outsider admiring an exotic culture. He was speaking from experience. You could tell he'd felt something. Maybe he'd watched someone pray or read a line from the Quran that hit him deep. Maybe he'd seen the peace in someone's eyes who lived that surrender daily. Whatever it was, it changed him. Because when you encounter truth like that, it brands you. You can't unsee it. He said, we keep trying to fix the world without fixing ourselves. That's probably one of the most honest things anyone in power has ever said, because most people in that space, they build careers on pretending they can fix everything. But he saw through it. He saw that the real war isn't between nations or ideologies. It's inside every person. The fight between ego and humility, between chaos and peace, between self-worship and surrender. And Islam, at its core, addresses that battle directly. It doesn't hide it. It gives it shape, gives it prayer, gives it purpose. And I think what really hit him was how universal that message is. It's not about culture. It's not even about identity. It's about alignment. Every human deep down wants peace. Every human at some point faces something bigger than themselves, death, love, loss, and realizes they're not in control. That's when surrender stops being philosophy and becomes necessity. But our world's allergic to humility. We call it weakness. We call faith not AV. We think intellect is the only way to truth. But intellect without surrender is just noise. It's like revving an engine with no direction. You can be the smartest person in the world and still be completely lost if you don't know where you're headed. That's what his words exposed, how brilliance without humility becomes blindness. And man, it's crazy because when he spoke, he didn't sound like he was trying to convince anyone. It sounded like he was confessing, like he'd carried this realization for a while and finally needed to let it out. That's why it shook people. Not because it was controversial, but because it was true. You could feel it. It had that stillness, that weight. He said the world's next great awakening won't come from science or politics. It'll come from people rediscovering what it means to kneel, to listen, to let go. That's not religion talk. That's human talk. That's a man realizing that the answers we're looking for in data and machines have been sitting in silence and prayer for centuries. And, when you listen to those words, really listen, it doesn't feel like he was predicting some distant future. It feels like he was describing what's already starting to happen. Like, people everywhere are beginning to wake up from this endless cycle of noise and confusion. They're realizing that all this progress we brag about, it's made us faster, richer, louder, but not happier. We've built towers into the clouds, but we've lost the ground beneath us. And Rob Bonta, standing there as this man of law, of reason, says something that sounds more like ancient wisdom than modern politics, that Islam holds something the world desperately needs again, peace through surrender. That's such a paradox, right? Peace through surrender. It's the opposite of everything we've been taught. We're told peace comes from victory, that you have to conquer chaos, defeat your enemies, dominate your fears. But what if peace isn't on the other side of a fight? What if it's on the other side of letting go? That's what he was getting at. And when you strip all the religious and cultural stuff away, that's the truth that lives under every tradition, every faith, every search for meaning, letting go of the illusion of control. He said he saw something in the simplicity of Islam that modern minds overlook. Like 5 prayers a day. It sounds repetitive, but he said that kind of rhythm actually saves you from drifting. It forces you to pause, reconnect, and remember who you are and why you're here. And I think he envied that man, because most of us live on autopilot. We just react to whatever's thrown at us. But that kind of structure, that discipline, that surrender to something higher, it rewires your whole being. It grounds you. And when he talked about it, it didn't sound like admiration. It sounded like realization. Like he wasn't just seeing truth, he was feeling it. You know that tone people have when they've gone through something real. That calm, almost sacred certainty. That's what his voice carried, and people didn't know how to process it, because we're not used to leaders being that vulnerable, that honest. We're used to sound bites, slogans, moral performances, not truth. What made it even more haunting was the timing. He said it near the end of his life, when every word starts to mean something. You could feel that he wasn't talking from theory, he was talking from the edge, from that place where everything artificial falls away and only the real remains. And in that space, what he found wasn't ideology, wasn't religion as people define it, it was peace. The kind that doesn't come from knowledge, but from surrender. He said, I think the next great teacher of humanity won't come in the form of a man. It'll come in the form of a mindset, one that knows how to bow. That one line still gives me chills. Because that's it. That's the thing we've forgotten. We think kneeling is submission to power, but it's actually connection to truth. You bow not because you're small, but because you recognize what's vast. You surrender not because you're weak, but because you finally understand you never had control in the first place. And that's what made his words feel so heavy, so final. He wasn't predicting doom. He was predicting awakening. He was saying the future won't belong to the loudest or the richest. It'll belong to the ones who learn to be still, the ones who rediscover humility, gratitude, and faith. He believed Islam carried that reminder that it's not about dominance or image, it's about peace, discipline, and alignment with the Creator. And when a man like him says that a man built from reason and reality, it's not religion, it's revelation. Tadasso, yeah, maybe his statement shocked people, maybe it rattled the system, but I think that was the point. Because truth is supposed to shake you. It's supposed to wake you up. And that's what he did before he left. He woke people up. He made them pause. He made them question. And maybe in that quiet pause, he gave the world a gift we're still trying to understand. The reminder that peace isn't found through power, but through surrender. The kind that starts not with nations or laws, but with a single heart learning how to bow. Cha-cha.